Welcome to Chapter 9, Learning How to Read for Research. Obtaining resources is only half the battle when you must read and evaluate them. Research is not for gluttons. Any book or article you read for research purposes must be used and left behind as quickly as possible, even though you can never take anything out of context. Remember that you need information. The source you have has too much information that's not relevant, and you must sift quickly through what you do need and find what you do need. So be ruthless and read what you need and abandon the rest. However, read enough to get a good idea of the author's main idea and be sure that you know what the author has said and why they are saying it. So, how do you get to know the material without reading it all? Remember that books and articles are sources of data. Learn how to extract the data with speed and efficiency, but remember to not quote the author out of context. Let's start with books. To begin with, have a good look at the title page, the preface, the foreword, and the introduction. These can give you solid clues as to why the book was written and what it's intended to do. Look at both the title and subtitle because the real purpose of the book is often in the subtitle. The book, the preface, foreword, or introduction tells what the author is attempting to do with the thesis statement of the book. It provides a description of the author's approach to the subject and of the material to be covered. Next, check out the table of contents. It provides you with the basic structure of the book in its proper order and gives you a sense of the whole development of the topic. Next, flip to the back and look at the index. The real value of an index lies in its ability to locate specific information when the book covers a broader topic. There's a couple of problems with an index. First, it often lists a lot of page numbers after each subject heading. If you compare the chapter headings with the page numbers in the index, it might help you speed up the process of identifying the most relevant sections. Secondly, remember when using the index to not take the information you find out of context. The Search Within feature in an ebook acts like an index. Input keywords and it will bring up relevant passages. Be sure to read around the keyword results enough that you get the context of the information. Next, give the book a run-through, even if you're only going to use part of it. Read the opening and concluding portions of each chapter to see what the author intended to cover and what they concluded. Look at the subheadings in the body of the text. And read any summaries or conclusions. If possible, look up book reviews of the book if it's confusing or potentially controversial. Finally, read the appropriate portions of the book, becoming a connoisseur of the argumentation. Ask probing questions and do a good analysis of everything you're reading. Ask the following questions. What's the author saying? What point of view or background is the author coming from that might influence what is being said? What biases are there? Is the author dealing with the issues? Is anything missing or minimized in that argument? Is the evidence presented fairly? Is there enough? And does it support the author's case? Is there counter evidence that needs to be considered? How does this approach or belief compare or contrast to the other things that you've been reading? Now, when analyzing periodical articles, you will find that they often lack some of the more familiar helps. Try to find an abstract for the article and use it to figure out the author's main points and conclusions. Watch for key propositions or statements of what the author believes to be true. It will be up to you to discern if these propositions or statements are right or not. They are usually presented in one of two ways. The author might start with a question, present various lines of evidence, and state a key proposition. Or the author might start with a key proposition, present evidence, and then restate the proposition. You'll have to figure out how the author presents them and find them. The key propositions form the foundation of the article, and everything else is evidence and introduction and conclusion. Check out the conclusion, which is the author's bottom line, beliefs or final thoughts. If the article doesn't give you enough clues, read the whole thing. This will help it if you must refer to it again. Badke has one of his Clearing the Fog segments about the way people look at sources. The Citation Project found that 77% of student citations relate only to the first 3 pages of sources, regardless of its length. The study found that many students only react with sources enough to get general ideas out of what's in them and to find a few quotations. This won't work with research. You have to interact with your sources. You do that by evaluating your resources. Evaluation is part of analytical reading. It is trying to figure out what's the author saying, how credible they are, and if their arguments are credible too. Excuse me. For each resource that you use, you must determine the following: the qualifications of the author, the biases of the author. Is the writing opinion or evidence? And is the material relevant to your problem? Biases are not necessarily bad things. You simply need to balance a biased research source with another resource on the other side. In fact, we all have biases, and you need to identify your own biases so that you can read the resources with those in mind. Opinions are not the same thing as evidence, and relevance is not the same thing as quality. It's crucial to distill out what you're reading, the essential things you're going to have to include in your research paper. There are many note-taking styles, and most people take way too many notes. Remember, the key is to have a good research question and preliminary outline to guide your research, and then to take notes from one resource at a time. Also, remember to make sure that you have recorded the author, the title, the place of publication, the publisher, the date, the journal name, the volume number, the date and page numbers for every resource you have retrieved. Each method has its benefits, and you should use the method best fit for the job. One type of note taker is the highlighter. They use the highlighter as soon as they make copies while the information is still fresh in their mind, and mark passages that are of importance. For PDFs, they use the comment function in the Adobe feature. If you are this type of note taker, beware of superficially interacting with your resource and keep your notes at a minimum. Name your files consistently and file them for clear and easy retrieval. One easy way to do this is to copy and paste and add your comments and summaries of your notes into a Word document. There are some programs that will help you do this. Evernote has Web Clipper that allows you to save stuff from the web, and the program allows you to retrieve your notes from anywhere because they're saved on the cloud. Scribble allows you to make annotations. It's also a good idea to subscribe to the program's email updates so that you know what is happening when the program and when they go away. There are additional apps for the phone like Cam Scanner, Genius Scan, Google Drive, Scannable from Evernote, and RefMe. There's some value in going all digital. You can get PDFs and scan hard copy portions. You can use a bibliographic manager to keep track of citations. You can label PDFs with your author title format. You can create a notes file in Word document that summarizes portions of your notes, identifies each document, and retains the page numbers. You can use screen capture to capture a copy, paste PDFs that won't allow you to do it any other way. But they won't be searchable. You may have trouble getting notes out of a PDF if you don't do it before transferring it to a Word document. And if you do, you'll have to search each individually. The next type of note taker is the quoter. This type of note taker copies material word for word. This method is helpful with new topics and has the advantage of not having to go back to the source. It offers greater accuracy and allows a researcher to get to know the material better. The disadvantages are that it's very labor intensive and the researcher must make sure that enough material is quoted to get the context. The next note-taker type is the summarizer. This type of note-taker reads part of the material and then summarizes it in their own words. The advantages of this are that it's quicker than quoting and it forces you to think about the material and to make it your own. The disadvantages are that it doesn't work well with different material, and you must go back to your resources to find quotations, and you must be sure you understand what you're reading. The final type of note taker is not recommended in most cases, and it's the paraphraser. This type of note taker rewrites each sentence of the original in their own words. The advantage of this is that it can be helpful if you're working through difficult material, as it sometimes makes the writer meaning clear. However, it leaves you wide open to charges of plagiarism, because most people will not change the notes enough to make it plagiarism-free. It's also labor-intensive. Use this type of note-taking only if you need to explain a piece of writing to yourself. Don't let paraphrased material appear in an actual research paper you have written, because doing so only puts you at risk for plagiarism charges. It's best to summarize. Badke offers some additional tips on note-taking. Make sure you leave nothing out of your notes. Keep full citation information. If you're quoting, use quotation marks in your notes. If you cut and paste, keep track of the page numbers by putting some marks in the quote to indicate where the page changes. When summarizing, be very conscientious of using your own wording, and if it's too close to the original, use quotes instead. Put page numbers that you are summarizing in the margin. If an idea comes to you when you're reading, put it in your notes, but put brackets around it and add your initials to show that it's your own thoughts, and use a code to put the note in the corresponding area of your outline. You have to be organized when you do research. So, what do you do if you're not? First, tell yourself that you must plan and you must be organized. Create a roadmap by asking yourself, what format do I plan on using to keep my notes? Where am I going to store my notes? What rules am I going to use for note-taking? Then stick with the plan. Badke ends the chapter by talking about plagiarism. Plagiarism is an act of passing someone else's work off as your own. It's an academic crime because it is the theft of someone's creativity. When you can't find the same idea in 2 or more independent sources, then it's unique, and you have to tell the reader where the idea came from, as well as when the quote contains concepts that are unique to an author. Generally known information doesn't need to be cited. Plagiarism is increasing, and most students cannot figure out why it's such a big deal. There's a difference between free access and your freedom to claim that you are the author of the information you copied from the internet. Intellectual property is a big deal in Western society. When you take someone else's works and ideas and pass them off as your own, you rob the words of the power that they have, because you have broken the connection between the creator of the information and the information itself. Research writing is a conversation that involves dialogue with the sources. If you don't cite the information that should be cited, you make yourself the authority, and you're not. It's very easy today to be caught plagiarizing. A simple Google search of a string of text from your papers will discover your plagiarism. Many institutions have plagiarism detection services where students submit their papers to the service analyzes them, then sends a report to the instructor about each paper and the potential of plagiarism in each. It's easy to be caught, and the results are not nice. International students face some challenges with the plagiarism. In many cultures, information is perceived as the property of the community more than the property of the individual. When the information is copied, it's considered honoring the author of the information. However, it's still considered wrong to pretend that other people's words or ideas are yours. International students who struggle with English are more likely to be caught when they do plagiarize, because their English is obviously different from the English used in the papers, making their plagiarism attempts easier to detect. We'll see you next time for Chapter 10.